This right here is perfection to me. And just look at that. Look at all of the layers on the inside. And do you see all of those juices coming out? What's up everybody, welcome back to my channel. I decided I'm gonna reshare a recipe for you guys. I'm gonna be making some red bread or salara, but I'm not gonna be doing it the traditional way with the fresh coconut that I already did on my channel. I'll have that linked right up here if you're interested in that. But I'm gonna do it with the pre-packaged shredded coconut. Now when I first posted that video, a lot of you guys commented and said it's very hard to get fresh coconut, or you're just feeling a little lazy to go ahead and grate some coconut. So you wanted me to do it with the pre-packaged version. So it's gonna be very quick, it's gonna be very simple, and I hope you guys enjoy it. The first step when making your red bread is to go ahead and prep your yeast and allow that to bloom. So in a little measuring cup here, I have some warm water. You do not want it to be too hot or it will kill the yeast. And you're gonna go in with your dried yeast. I'm using a package of regular dry active yeast. If you wanted to use the instant yeast, you could. And after I go in with that yeast, I'm also going to go in with some granulated sugar. Now, if you wanted to, you could use brown sugar or demerara sugar for this, and it won't make a difference. I just had white sugar on hand, that's why I'm using it. So we're going to stir this up, and then we are going to cover it and allow it to sit in a warm place for about 15 to 20 minutes, or until you see that it starts to bubble up and get foamy at the top. While that yeast mixture is blooming, I'm going to start on the dried ingredients. So in my mixer bowl here, I have my all-purpose flour. I'm also going to go in with just a little pinch of salt. That's really going to help bring a rounded flavor to the entire dough. And I'm also going to go in with the rest of my sugar. I'll have my measurement down below and I'll have it split up as per what you need to put it in during this dish. And I'm also going to go in with a little bit of lemon zest. The real secret to getting that bread to taste like you got it from a West Indian bakery is to go in with a little bit of lemon zest, or you can use some lemon oil or extract. And once you go ahead and just mix up those dried ingredients really quick, you're going to go in with your melted butter. And all I'm going to do is put it in there, and I'm going to allow this to mix for a little bit until that butter is well incorporated with the flour. And after about 15 minutes, you're going to see that your yeast mixture gets nice and foamy on top and very bubbly. Now, if this does not happen after the 15 to 20 minutes, then your yeast might not be good, or you might have used too cold or too hot water, and you might have killed the yeast. At that point, you should start over because you do not want to ruin all of your flour and your other ingredients. So all I'm going to do once it gets nice and bubbly, I'm going to add it on top of my dried ingredients. I'm going to rinse out that little bowl and add in a little bit more water because it's going to need it. And then I'm going to allow this to mix really, really well. Now, you might have to add more water during this whole process because that 1 cup of water that we dissolved the yeast in is not enough water for the entire dough. You want a semi-soft dough, almost as if you were making roti, maybe a little bit softer. So this way your dough can be nice and pliable and you won't have a hard bread in the end. So the entire recipe calls for 4 cups of flour, and for the 4 cups of flour, I think that it was about 1.5 cups of water that I added in total. I also wanted to mention that if you didn't want to use water, you could also use milk for this to make the dough a little bit more rich. So I just kneaded this in my stand mixer on a medium speed for about 5 minutes until it got nice and smooth and very elastic, just so we could work with the glutens a little bit. And at this point, I'm just going to smooth it out into a nice ball. And I'm going to cover this and allow it to rest for about 1 hour to 1.5 hours until it doubles in size. Now at this point, we're going to start working on the filling or the coconut mixture. Now being that I'm using the pre-packaged coconut today, my method for making the filling is going to be just a little bit different. Remember, when you're using the pre-packaged coconut over the fresh coconut, the pre-packaged stuff is a little bit more dry because it doesn't have that full fat content that the fresh coconut has. So we need to introduce a little bit more moisture and a little bit more fat into that filling. So in my heavy bottom pan here, I am going in with some unsalted butter and I'm just going to allow that to melt. And once your butter is melted, it is time to go in with your coconut. So what I'm using is the sweetened coconut flakes from the grocery store that come in a little bag. It's basically pre-curated coconut that is sweetened. And if you wanted to, you could use the unsweetened version. Just know you might have to add a little bit of sugar. But what I did was I took this coconut out of the bag and I went ahead and I put it in my food processor so this way I could get it to a finer texture. If you're a person that doesn't like biting down on the huge flakes of coconut, then make sure you do that step because it made for a really, really great texture. But if you really like the big flakes, then you can just go ahead and dump it in as is. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stir this up and I'm going to parch it or toast it in that butter for about 2 to 3 minutes until you see a couple golden brown marks on the coconut. And after about 2 to 3 minutes, you're going to see that the coconut gets a little bit of golden brown all over it. And at that point, you're going to go ahead and add in your granulated sugar and you're going to add in your spices. You're going to go in with some ginger powder, or you can use fresh ginger.
and you're also going to go in with some freshly grated nutmeg. Now, as usual with any of my recipes, you can use the brown sugar or the demerara sugar for this versus white sugar, but again, white sugar is what I had on hand, so I'm using that for this. Now, once you add all of those ingredients in, you're just going to stir everything up really well until all of these ingredients are combined. I'm going in with some water, and I'm also going in with my vanilla extract or mixed essence, and I'm going in with a pinch of salt. Again, if you were doing the fresh coconut, you wouldn't have to add in any water, but being that this is the sweetened coconut flakes that are a little more dry, you have to introduce a little bit more moisture into it. And all of my ingredients and my measurements will be down in the description box below. Now, after I mix in my water, my mixed essence, and my little pinch of salt, I'm also going to go in with a little bit of condensed milk. Now, what this condensed milk is going to do is it's not only going to make the filling nice and rich and add another layer of sweetness, but it's also going to keep it very, very moist. Now, once you go in with that condensed milk, you're also going to go in with some red food coloring. Whenever I make any of these Guyanese sweets or Guyanese baked goods and I have to use coloring, I much prefer to use the powdered food coloring over the liquid stuff. The reason why I say that is because the liquid stuff, if you use too much of it, sometimes it can give your dish a bitter taste. So you want to be careful of that. So just gauge it and taste it as you go if you're using the liquid stuff. But as you guys can see, I'm using the powdered version. After about 3 to 4 minutes of bubbling on a medium to medium low heat, this is what your coconut mixture should look like. You don't want to overcook it and over dry it, or else it can be just dry when you put it in your red bread. You want it to still have a nice moisture and a nice glisten to it. So this is exactly what you're looking for here. And I'm going to go ahead and just take it off the heat now and let it cool. My bread dough has been rising for about an hour, and as you guys can see, it has doubled in size and it looks absolutely amazing. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and scrape it out of the bowl. Now, once you get it out onto your surface, you're going to want to go ahead and split it up into 2 equal balls. The reason being is because we're going to make 2 loaves of Salara today. So if you wanted to, in retrospect, you could half this recipe and you'll get 1 loaf of Salara. But in my family, this stuff goes fast, so that's why I always make 2. And once you get your dough balls separated, you're going to go ahead and flour your surface a little bit, and you're going to roll out one of them with your rolling pin. I'm going to roll my dough to about 1/4 inch thickness just because I like when the dough is nice and thin and I have a lot of coconut stuff in my Salara. If you wanted it to be a little thicker, you could roll it as thick or as thin as you want. But once you get it to your desired thickness, you're going to take half of that coconut mixture that we just made once it has cooled down a little bit, and you're going to spread it all over the surface of this rolled out dough. So once you get it spread out evenly, you're just going to start from one end and you're going to roll it nice and tight until you get to the other end of the dough. Now, once you get to the other end of the dough, you want to make sure to seal it really, really well. And as you guys can see, I'm just going to turn it around a little bit and I'm going to start to pinch the sides together well, so this way nothing will leak out. And once you finish sealing that seam together, you're also going to go to the edges and you're just going to keep on tucking them in and sealing it, whichever way works best for you. And at that point, your roll is done and it is ready to put on your baking sheet. Now, I like to use a baking sheet where I put some parchment paper on, because every once in a while you will get some Salara that bursts in the oven, and while it will still taste amazing, you do not want your pan to have sugar stuck all over it, because if it does, it's just a mess to clean up. So I always put the parchment paper down and nothing will stick if anything bursts. So once you put it down on that parchment paper on your pan, you want to pat it down just slightly so this way it can flatten out a bit, because as it is right now, it is too much of a log. You want it to be a little more flat. So I've gotten both of my loaves all done and filled. All I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to cover this with a tea towel and I'm going to allow it to sit for about another 45 minutes to an hour, so this way it can rise again. What you're looking for here is for it to double in size again, maybe about 3/4 in size to double the size, but basically you want that to happen, and once that occurs, we can bake it. Now this is what my Salara rolls look like after they've been rising for the second time for about an hour, and at this point it is ready to go into an oven that's been preheated to 350 degrees, and it is going to bake there for about 30 minutes until it has a beautiful dark brown outside, and you're going to hear it in the oven. You're going to hear it bubbling a little bit, and that's because of all the sugar and the coconut on the inside. You guys, look at this right here. I just pulled my Salara out of the oven and it's been 30 minutes. As you guys can see, it has a beautiful golden brown color all over. They're perfectly cooked on the inside. So what I'm going to do right now, as soon as they come out of the oven, you got to hit them with some melted butter. You want to brush them liberally, so this way they'll stay nice and moist on the top. I'm just going to brush these down, allow them to cool for a little while before I cut into them, because if you were to cut into them while it's really, really hot, they might fall apart and that coconut mixture, all the juice might leak out. So you guys know I cannot end this video without showing you guys what the inside of this Salara looks like. As you guys can see, it is packed full of coconut. All of those layers look absolutely perfect. And if you look very closely, it is still glistening, and when I squeeze on it, it is very, very juicy and moist. I promise you guys, you're never going to go to the West Indian bakery to buy Salara again. You're going to want to make it at home all the time, because not only is it very easy, but you know what you're putting into it, and you know it is going to come out perfect every time.
Alright guys, and now the moment of truth. You saw me put together this red bread or this Salara, and you saw how quick and simple it came together. The longest part is waiting for that bread dough to rise. But I wanted to give you guys an up close of what this Salara looks like. And just look at that. Look at all of the layers on the inside, and look, I'm going to squeeze down. And do you see all of those juices coming out? This right here is perfection to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and try it for you guys. As soon as you guys bite into that, a whole bunch of juiciness, a whole bunch of coconut. And honestly, look at all that coconut just spilling out of there. If you're a coconut lover like myself and my family, you're gonna love this recipe. The bread is perfect, it's nice and soft. Alright, so I'm dropping coconut on the floor now. I'm gonna have to go and I have to finish this piece of red bread. Maybe half the loaf if I'm really feeling it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe, and if you guys did, make sure you give this video a nice big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed yet. And if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you're clicking that red subscribe button and you're clicking the little bell notification icon, so this way you'll never miss out on when I post my newest videos. And of course, leave those comments and keep them coming in the description box down below, so this way I can see what to make next. Bye everybody.